No point me going in there. Okay, everybody, part 2. Tony Topping.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for listening to me. Just going to do a bit more, just going to play you the UFO clip, just because we can now play the videos, thanks to Matthew. Just go for it. Oh no, ah yes, well, hey, right, here we go. So what we've got going on here is the UFO coming in. This is the UFO that triggered my covert harassment. It is in fact, I'd be bold enough to say, a Channel 4 not here, great. I'd be bold enough to say that it is not of this world. It's been analysed as not of this world. My government knows at the time that it was not of this world. I'm a British taxpayer and I've been subjected to harassment by this. And so, what we've got is the UFO coming in, and we've got the UFO coming. Did you want to film that, Channel 4? Yeah. Right, just let me, I'll just pause that again for you. I'll start that again. Yeah, so what we've got is the UFO coming in over my home, as you can see. And as I explained earlier, this is what triggered some very strange covert harassment. The UFO is now coming in. You will note that it will go behind a tree. Whoever is in it, whatever is in it, will realise that they can't see me and I can't see them. It knows, and it will pull back outwards. In other words, it will move sideways. Chris French on This Morning indicated that that was a helicopter or an aeroplane. It goes sideways, it's moved back on itself. The strobing sequence gives the impression that it's an aircraft in flight, probably travelling away from me, but it's been imaged, analysed. It is not a civil aviation colour code sequence of an aircraft in flight. It's now travelling upwards. There are other UFO around it. It's here for a reason. They don't do anything without a reason. And as you can see, it'll back away. Watch the TV antennas. It'll illuminate it twice. By a strange twist of irony, this has appeared on quite a few TV programmes. They must have been having a joke when they illuminated the TV antenna twice. Because obviously they knew. There, one. And it'll do it for a second time, and there'll be another UFO just hovering. And the second time, as you can see there. So that's what triggered a whole host of strange goings-on by people who, as you can see, as I explained earlier, what is worrying is I'm a taxpayer, I'm a British citizen, and we shouldn't, even all of us sat in this room, should not be putting up with this. So that's the story behind it. What is good about this as well is we'll actually see a video clip of Bock, and he'll explain exactly what his life and everything that's been going on with him is all about. Just let me move forward now to where we need to be. We've got Aya the performer, which you don't need to play really. Quran, Lord of the Rings, Saga is, da-da, shidam, shidi, shidam, da-dum, 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 da-dum. Right. We know that this is the Bock Saga is a true history of the human race upon the earth. Predates currently the known written records and archeological findings and all known artifacts. Now I was saying to a lady earlier that there are approximately 5 to 6 volumes missing. There's a possibility that Bock was actually, and the Bock family were reciting from one of these missing volumes. I would hazard a guess it was something called the Book of Friends, or I might be wrong on that one. It was something like that. It was the Book of something. I've just forgotten what it was, but it was what it was probably relating to. It has 4 major periods in Earth history, does the Bock Saga. Paradise Time, Atlantis. Everybody thinks, everybody thinks that Atlantis was a location. In the Bock Saga, Atlantis was not a location, it was an event, it was a happening, it was a national, worldwide, global disaster where all the land became ice. So we've got Paradise Time, which is known as the time following Atlantis. Atlantis is where all the land became ice. All land is ice. And then we had New Times, what is happening now. So we're currently in something called New Times, at a risk of something called the Ragnarok, which is destruction, a second Ragnarok. There is a third Ragnarok. We're at the risk of something called Ragnarok. The Crusaders on the 24th of July 1050, there's this history of oppression, brutal oppression, and it is linked to your experiences with UFOs and the paranormal, this oppression, what I'm talking about. A crusade was launched to exterminate a world centre called Hell, which we now know as Helsinki, which was the centre of Paradise Time, the centre of the Bock Saga, the centre of what we're talking about. And of course this reason was esoteric. They kept it hidden kind of like until about 1248. And the families of the Bock family and the House of Asa escaped, and it was the Swedish king, Birger Jarl, who gave them permission to return to South Finland as long as they would keep quiet about the old saga. There's also a family in the United Kingdom who was aware of the Bock Saga that was persecuted as well, in a very important point in Britain's ancient history. Now, this is the important bit for Channel 4. This is the bit what they were wanting to know about. This is to do with UFOs. You may ask yourself, why? This is a very famous picture of a man stood there with his arms folded while everybody else is doing the Sieg Heil sign, yeah? What is interesting to note is that for some reason Hitler wanted to ensure that this, what we're talking about, never saw the light of day. That is probably because Hitler had every member of the House of Asa bloodline. It's the House of Asa bloodline, which actually included some Buddha, Jesus, and a few other people within the House of Asa. He wanted every one of them murdered. Now, in terms of what this oppression is, at first we see the oppression as Hitler wanting to kill people. We see it as the Crusades. What you'll probably appreciate as experiencers is that there is a paranormal element to it. During the 1950s, there was an organisation called the Collins Elite. You may have heard of Majestic 12, but there was another UFO organisation called the Collins Elite. They were investigating why UFOs were coming into American airspace and for some reason shooting down aircraft. Hence something called the UFO Air War of 1950, which is documented in the New York Times because the American government wanted recruitment of more anti-aircraft batteries. The saga is that we don't know who fired first, but we know that this organisation, the Collins Elite, found out, and the Collins Elite consisted of elements of US Army intelligence, elements of the FBI and of the CIA and of the US Air Force. They found out through research during the 1950s via the Collins Elite that certain people, including Crowley and possibly Jack Parsons, were creating via ritual, via the esoteric portals. This triggered them. This triggered, according to this agency, the Collins Elite, the UFOs to come in, and it triggered an air war. So what the Collins Elite realised was that via esoteric ritual and via portals and via openings, the UFOs were coming in. Not only is that the most important thing, but probably the most cutting-edge research about all this is the fact that humanity, as we discover from the remote, as I discovered in my own research from remote viewing, humanity has a subconscious. It has a subconscious collective. You will not see UFOs invading down the street with laser beams. A UFO, if it wants to do any harm or something that is non-human, if it wants to get into the human subconscious, it does exactly what we're seeing in that photo there. It uses us to oppress ourselves. It's this constant theme of perhaps having this non-human intelligence which is around us, called non-human entity or NHE, that is causing these problems that we see. Possibly, I hazard a guess, in my opinion, the oppression of the information that we see at the moment as well. At some point, according to the Bock Saga, there's the bit about the alien intervention as well, how the daughters of men mated with the aliens from above and they were fair. There's I've forgotten the name of the researcher, but he's the Irish researcher, very, very good, who was indicating that there's also the ancient Irish folklore that no woman has been in a position of power for thousands of years because the men have never forgiven the women for mating with the UFOs from above. No, therefore, women were denied power. The sacred feminine was denied power. As we can see here, the Bock Saga indicates that the genetics of the monkey and the bock, and the goat, should I say, formed to create the first two humans. That is not scientifically possible. However, because it sounds symbolic scholars of the Bock Saga believe that we are looking at something that may be more than that. We believe that possibly the monkey is the universe, and that the goat and the other thing is actually the merging of forces to create life. But it appears to be laughable. It isn't, because it's obviously sound symbolic and there's a hidden meaning about it. We know that these incidents where this was created, where the House of Asa began the Bock Saga and began the message to populate the world after disaster, which is what the Alphernas Beten ring is all about, occurred around the North Pole area. Some scholars in Scandinavia would argue that it began in the Mediterranean area, but there's strong evidence to suggest that Scandinavia was the centre of where it all began, at a place called Odima or Udima. And at its centre was hell, meaning clear, home and complete. So what we have is a higher form of intelligence that's possibly not human, that created an alphabetical system upon a population that could not read or write, that has a historical timeline, that finds its way through us, but is intercepted by something that is paranormal, which takes shape into the global conflicts and the chaos that we see today. And that is where it's relevant for you, the basis people here. That is where it's the UFO theme and the Bock Saga appear, from my own research anyway, to be relevant. So that's where we're going with it. Within the rot language, this is fascinating. I apologise for it just being text heavy, you just bear with me, but the rot language means the understanding of planet. Back then, the ancient rot language via the Alphernas Beten, planet means plan. They had a plan. And et means family. They had a family plan to create wholeness after paradise time, when all the land is ice. Do you get the concept? We have a higher intelligence telling a population that cannot read or write to plan family, plan, create wholeness, that men and women are equal, that the history, the man had his story, and the female had a mis-story or mystery. Both understood the knowledge of how the light of the sun enables all things to grow, and everything is known as Odin or light. And Odin represents the knowledge of the court of Asa. That is the bloodline, the court of Asa, the Asa people. Therefore, it was one ring, one breeding system that gave rise to Jehovah, feeling good, respectful, divine, ordered. And that system was hunted and down and destroyed. I believe there's a paranormal element to that. I always will believe that there's a paranormal element to this destruction, what we're seeing. There it is. So we've got higher intelligence, population that cannot read or write, being delivered to civilization centres across the planet, that plan. Incredible. Via a ring, and as the lady said earlier, that had the chromosome with the Y on it, meaning populate the planet. But of course the saga describes the fall of man. The female was excluded, as her mystery became taboo. The respect of, as in the symbol of the arrow and the dot, the sperm and the penis, the respect of sharing sperm and sav, as it was known back then, it was known as holy or holy. And it created, as the Bock Saga, as the rot language says, the immune system or immune system, meaning in the mouth, creating a healthy system. That's what it all means. So they had this orderedness in society. Society was then destroyed by all the land is ice, and they needed to rebuild society. That is the story of the Bock Saga via an alphabet. But of course, as we see today, respect of the female became lost. As a result, men did not understand the mystery to assimilate the seed of knowledge, and it did not follow the breeding system as laid down by the Asa teachers to create wholeness with Odin. There is rumours that the House of Asa is also the giants that we see. There is a link to the giants of Ireland and all that kind of thing. Tenuous, I've read it, I'm not sure about it, but there is this hint that there is the royal family of Asa that has delivered this system to a crippled people after a global disaster. Christianity corrupted the meaning of the Bock Saga. The original meanings were changed, lost, or contaminated. And the female was denied worth and equality. Yet, in other UFO research capacity, as we say earlier, there's Michael Teresian indicates that in certain folklore, the woman was never forgiven for mating with the alien and never held a position of power. That seems to be the other factor that is missing from the Bock Saga. The sperm and saliva became no longer honoured, and it was wasted. We can see a collapse going on, a gradual collapse going on from this higher ordered society into perhaps in a way what we see today, the corruption we maybe see today. We know the first Bock was free, and the second Bock was Frigga, or the nanny goat or swan, and the alphabet refers to the keeler of sound, so that all humans would be good or good. Could I just have a time check, please?
1:30.
1:30, thank you. And they all became what was called within the House of Asa the Perrette family. There was also the Rosette family within England who are linked to this as well. What they had is they developed the family which was called Ra and Maya. And because they did not meet, the sacred law indicates that they cannot mate because there are teachers. In Scandinavian countries, even to this day, teachers were not allowed to have children, and if they did, they couldn't teach. Now, I understand, I might be wrong on that one. What I've read, that law still exists today. So the male and the female of the House of Asa that was in kinship to the people in paradise time were called Ra and Maya. They were the equivalent of a royal family. We're possibly looking at a non-human intelligence. We're possibly looking at something that's advanced, that was instructing humanity to go down a particular direction after a global disaster. The global disaster was, I think, a pole slip that caused all the land is ice. And it is not so much a location, but a time in history. The ancients saw it coming over 50 million years ago and had to change the planet. And the saga says that the change happened 50 million years ago, causing a pole shift. All the land is ice. Atlantis is not a period in history, it is a location. It is an event that happened. All the land is ice. And the Asa, the royal court of Asa, set people 10 locations up around the world so that the Vanna people, back then the whole collective was called the Vanna people, could survive. And they developed 10 breeding systems that became 10 races. I think we were one of them. No, we weren't. Chinese were. India, China, few others. And they became the 10 races under what is known as the Root Van language, the Rot language, which is what that ring is all about. So that's what it became after all the land was ice. According to the saga, of course, there are boats that were built, Noah's Ark, as we can see there, on the second destruction, or the Ragnort. What is fascinating is that the royal court of Asa, a collective of people, knew that this was coming, that this destruction was on the way to us. They knew it was on the way, with technology that we probably don't understand. The time after ice, however, the surviving Asa returned to Helsinki, what we know as Helsinki, over 9,000 years ago, when the waters receded, and hell became known as Helsinki, as we see. And Helsinki in Finland is now where the original breeding system was re-established, from the development of the Alphernas Beten alphabet from a higher, what I believe, possibly alien or non-human intelligence. I don't think humans developed it. I think it was something else that developed it. Okay, let me just go forward because I want to just take you to Bock himself speaking, because we're pushed for time. And I'm going to show you now Bock and the Lemminkäinen Temple. Now, what happened at the Lemminkäinen Temple, we will see in action some very serious and sinister goings-on when this man discovered that he could take an archeological team into his ancient family's chamber based at Lemminkäinen in Finland and find out what was happening in there. The team of archaeologists wanted to go in and find out if there was actually artifacts in there. There is sinister events around this. It's sinister what happened to Bock. This is his story of the Lemminkäinen Temple. You won't be able to hear it because there's no sound, is there? You won't be able to hear that, surely. Can I hear it at the back? You won't be able to hear it, can you?
The underworld of hell. That, however, was not just a story, but also an enigma. In the summer of 1998, I was the connecting link in the project to look closer at that enigma, to try to open the entrance, and to have the whole thing documented on video. This is, finally, that document. It really took time to figure this one out.
That's Bock.
Som egentligen grundar sig redan på centrifugalkraftens början då vi fick den här planeten.
Don't know if we can turn the lights out, can we? Is there any lights now?
Som
saker som jag har visat. På sommaren bodde vi med min mamma och min syster i en by som hette Elves. Denna lilla ljusför så berättades det första gången för mig om länken och äpplen. Jag var bara 20 år gammal. Min pappa hade dött då var jag 3 månader och 3 veckor gammal. Så jag har äntligen fått all information från min mamma och min syster. Och när de berättade för mig att det fanns en undervärld så tog det ändå många år för mig själv att förstå att detta undervärld faktiskt existerar. Jag visste att 1987 så skulle vi börja öppna denna undervärld. Men ännu då kunde jag inte riktigt fatta att det gällde mig själv och ljudet som ett hål. Det första vi gör är att vi börjar gräva ner. För mig hade det berättats att det var blockerat med stenskivor. Blockerat med stenskivor, det visste också vi här som började gräva. Efter det vi hade tagit bort de här runda stenarna som små pojkar hade rullat ner och tagit bort en gyttja som fanns så kom det fram till någonting som såg som sten. Och för oss måste det vara den första stenskivan. Men många specialister sa att det var urberg, att här är ingenting. Men sen kom hakulinen vår som sedan har stött och det hela. Och han borrade en borr igenom och det kom igenom så vi visste att det gällde en skiva. Och då föreslog vi att man skulle ta en stor kran som skulle göras 4 hål i skivan och på det sättet lyfta upp stenskivan för att sen komma till följande skivan. Men vi blev uppmanade att spränga så den sprängdes sönder den första skivan. Efter den kom det en liknande skiva igen som också borren gick igenom. Och då sprängdes också den bort. Och så kom det väl ännu till en tredje skiva neråt och också den sprängdes bort. Men den fjärde skivan så gick han igenom urberget på nedsidan. Och det är första gången och enda gången han faktiskt har rört urberget. Hakulinen, han kunde inte veta att det var inga fler skivor utan där var vi nere vid urberget som är alldeles där.
And what had happened there, that's just a brief clip. Because of sound, I'm not going to too long, it's not fair on you because the sound's crap. But basically what happened there is that the Lemon Cannon Temple, they discovered via surface and sonar radar that there was a chamber under there. A member of the Finnish royal family and a few other people knew about all this, but it was all mysteriously closed down. About a fortnight later, Bock was stabbed and left paraplegic by a person who was looking after him. Mysteriously as well, a mysterious internet site was set up regarding the Lemon Cannon Temple, but nothing was published on it. It was shut down completely, and the chamber is still there, possibly with the objects in. There are other artifacts of the heathen culture buried in various locations across Finland. And according to Aya, who we just saw there, within this area are the 2 golden bocks of the Bock family and the crystal balls that are buried in a place called Snappertuna. So what you've got is a miniature version of ancient Egypt going on, with ancient relics knocking around, a suppression going on, and of course Aya Bock having a very unsticky fate, a real unsticky fate with the people who looked after him. Tragically he died, the 2 people who looked after him stabbed him to death, and they were tried for murder. It's a tragedy what happened to him. So the new findings, though, there are other findings present. Archaeologists recently found 4,000-year-old settlements northeast of Finland in the White Sea region. That was known as the Pecora project. Once again, the archaeologists involved got into bother. There's this constant theme of esoteric societies and secret societies who know this ancient knowledge, and even the church, suddenly clamping down on anything like this. And I think that, as you as experienced would appreciate, that there's a paranormal drive behind this. There's something that is hidden from us, that is driving all this along, so that we are oppressed from our birthright, which is to understand the higher intelligence. That's the Wolf Cave as well. And by the summer of 2001, the Finnish Board of Antiquities had proved that people had lived there for at least 300,000 years within that area. At first they denied it, and then they changed their mind. And so it goes in with the Bock Saga that during the time of Atlantis and in Paradise time within the area of Scandinavia, people lived there. It's this constant theme of suppression that is going on within there. Taking you to part 2, J.R. Tolkien, and it was a secret book. We believe that from research that The Lord of the Rings is an epic high fantasy novel as we well know. And it's mind-blowing to believe, from research, tenuous but present, mysteriously present, that the Ring of Power that we've spoken from may have been a concept born from the Bock Saga. Possible that Tolkien was a student of the Bock Saga. What is perceived and has been suppressed by the Lord of the Rings is the kingdoms. With the House of Asa there was 9 kingdoms. It developed into the Ringland. That's true. That actually happened within the Bock Saga. It developed, the House of Asa called these 9 civilizations the Ringland. He didn't get that from anywhere else. He studied the Calvella as well, but we believe he actually studied the Bock Saga. He was a closet Bock Saga student, and that a civilization like the Lord of the Rings existed back then in Paradise time is quite possible. There is a, how can I put it, within linguistics there's kind of like a thing that happens whereby they believe that if a book is compelling, it's probably because it happened with real events. If you are compelled by a fictional book, it's perhaps because it happened by real events. That's where some linguistic professors think the Lord of the Rings lies. There is academic denial regarding the rot and root language even existed. Evidence suggests that knowledge surfaced in 1835 and also from the 15th century as well, that poems and stories were orally passed down. This was known as the Calvella, and it was researched by a guy called Elias Lonrot. But there is also ancient priests of the 15th century that knew the Bock Saga existed and was aware of the ring. Today, currently in our society, nowhere to be seen. Ask somebody, an academic, the Bock Saga, they won't know. They won't know about the ring, they won't know about the ancient civilization, nor Atlantis. Anything like that, suppressed, off the record. It's bizarre. It really is. It is no coincidence, I think, that that Tolkien was aware of this Bock Saga. He was a professor of linguistics, he was good at languages, he also studied how language processes through time. He was a close studier of that as well. It is true to say with all of this, I'm sure you agree as experiencers, that we see the net move, but not the ball. For example, the Lord of the Rings trilogy is a language based on a mythic synthesis. It's synthesized altogether beautifully. He created 14 languages and fell in love with the Finnish language and then created the Elfish language. So it's not a coincidence that the Alphernas Beten is known by Tolkien as the Prayer of Elves. It's not a coincidence that it's actually known as the Prayer of Elves. We see the net move, but we do not see the ball. That's not a coincidence either. He's looked at something ancient that was hidden, I do believe, to reach the conclusions of the book, The Lord of the Rings. It's a work in the art of sound, as in the Bock Saga. It's a work of fantasy, and it's only engaging to the reader as a substitute for reality. Then that is very true. A work of fantasy is only engaging to you if it is reality. You have to have something that the reader identifies with subconsciously. That's interesting. You have to have something that the reader identifies with subconsciously. As experiencers, that picture I showed earlier of Adolf Hitler with the salute and the guy with the arms folded, people subconsciously, something going on subconsciously within the collective. It's hidden from view, you won't see it, because that's where the exit and entry point is of it all, in terms of the paranormal, and in terms of us being oppressed. It's a sound-based and not a based, it's sound-based and not symbol-based, so it's all based on sound. For example, as I said earlier, the Orc word for fire. Can I just have a time check off someone, please?
Quarter to.
Quarter to. We know that the Lord of the Rings and the languages based from there is crucially from Scandinavia, and we know that the Tolkien sound and the meaning of the Bock Saga also had sound and meaning. It's sound symbolic. The Bock Saga is also sound symbolic. Quenya, which is High Elven, has sonorant. so does Finnish. So a sonorant is something that's hummed. The Bock Saga had that, the Lord of the Rings had that as well. What is fascinating about Tolkien is that he studied languages that was extinct. He was an expert in Germanic languages, of which I think English is one of them, but he was studying one that was extinct. That, we believe, is possibly the Rot language. We believe that he probably studied it, and there were 30 in total in Uralic languages, and we believe that he studied the missing one, which was to do with the Bock Saga. Tolkien placed this work in his works so that people would understand the higher knowledge. He did it deliberately. It was hidden from view for us. You were there to discover it subconsciously. It was all about the subconscious, which is where now it goes beyond looking in a field for the UFOs. It goes all beyond that now. As you would appreciate, it's to do with the subconscious thing. And as James, the next speaker, Michael, the next speaker, will come on and tell you, I think Michael will take it to the next level of what really goes on, of what I'm talking about, of this subconscious theme, this dirtiness that's in there, this corruption that goes on. As we saw in the oppression of the Bock Saga and the people who were behind it. We know that there are connections originating from Finland and Finnish. This is research that's come up, but I can't follow the link to it, that the War of the Roses was actually oppression of the Asa bloodline related to the Bock Saga. It is the War of the Roses was actually a battle for wiping out the bloodline of Asa, linked to the Bock Saga, known as the Rosette family. Also, Edinburgh has a fantastic and amazing, look at this. This I find absolutely fascinating. There's a possible that the Asa civilization from Scandinavia came to Scotland. Scotland has an incredible history of links between Egypt and the ancient civilizations. That, so we are led to believe, is a possible pyramid. According to research, it is the same measurements as the ancient pyramids going downwards. It's the same measurements as it's the Berwick, North Berwick Law, that's called, and it's a pyramid. We understand that in the area of Edinburgh and Scotland, there are pyramids. There are structures that are not in mainstream society's archaeological findings. That suppressed history tells us that there is an advanced people in Scotland. I recommend a book for you. I can't remember the author, but it talks about the hidden pyramids of Edinburgh and this ancient civilization. It's called We the Scythians. We the Scythians, it's called. And it's an amazing book. It's about £75, but it's the suppressed ancient history of Scotland, which links in to the Bock Saga. Certainly does. It links in some way, and that's meant to be. So some researchers are saying one of the pyramids in Scotland. You saw early on the Croatian pyramid. It was in Croatia. That one I showed earlier was actually in Croatia. Bosnian pyramid it was, yeah. So some conclusions. Perhaps Tolkien was triggering a collective memory. I do believe that our collective memory as human beings has been oppressed. I believe it's been invaded by something unknown. And it points to an unknown history. And this is the point, the kinship bit, the sacred kinship, where the state of matters among men served a different purpose back then. We're talking about an economic system that did not have money. We're talking about an ordered society. Perhaps it wasn't perfect, but what is amazing is, just to conclude and wrap up, we've got a higher order intelligence that's delivered a system to a population that could not read or write, that has been oppressed down the centuries after a global disaster. It came from a royal household whose bloodline is possibly, I do believe, not human. And from that, it triggered events through history to oppress it. But like water, it finds itself all the way through. You've taken a lot in. And I do believe that there is links to the... Well, there is definitely, from my point of view. I've seen it firsthand. I've had the interactions with it all. I've seen the nastiness behind the scenes of the oppression, which is not human. Many, like Miles, who do the Basis series, and you who are Basis experiences, will conclude there's something going on within our collective psyche that is not human, propelling us through various events. So I think that about wraps it up. I thank you for this, for listening to me. It's been quite kind of like a lot to take in for you, but I hope that you can see the link between the UFOs and the higher consciousness that's going on, and the oppression from a third unknown party filtering through our history and society. It's clearly pleasant within what happened with the Bock Saga, and tragically Aya Bock was murdered, as I say, and it was absolutely tragic, and his family history is no more. But I hope that that's been of great use to you. I hope you've taken it in, and thank you very much indeed for listening to me. I had to I just had to speed it up because we were a bit pushed for time because there's 1,001 slides. But I do recommend the Scythians, the ancient pyramids around Edinburgh. There's evidence of the civilization there. If you've got any questions,
How's it spelled?
Scythian, Scythins, Scythians, yeah.
Further reading, what else was around to...
The further reading would be the work of Les Whale on the Bock Saga. There's some brilliant articles to do with the Lord of the Rings and the Bock Saga as well. The book by Nick Redfern called Final Events, which explains the Collins elite situation, I think would be of further reading. I'm trying to get hold of the other book to do with Edinburgh and the pyramids because I think that's fascinating stuff. Any other questions? Yeah.
Yes, I'm puzzled about the rings.
Yes.
The picture of the ring you showed had the complete, including Scandinavian editions of the modern Latin alphabet.
Right, yes. Yes.
Well, I thought that was supposed to be an ancient.
It is. What they did is they developed an ancient alphabet that is an example taken off the internet, by the way. So I'm not sure of its accuracy as to what that ancient alphabet is. But what you're saying is...
That's an ancient alphabet.
No.
That's the modern European alphabet.
According not, because what Bock was doing, he was reciting that in a video clip that I've got, that very alphabet. So I don't know, not sure. I'm not sure. The jury's out on that one. I'll have to look myself. I'm not disagreeing with you. I'll look. I need to investigate that because it's not an ancient.
If it was in runic alphabet, I believe a bit more.
It is slightly in runic though in places, is it not? It's not in runic. It would be runic. I do agree with you actually. It would be runic, yeah. But that's an example of it. Right, okay. Well, that's an example of it, but he's reciting it. That's what baffles me. He's reciting from what you're... That's baffling. I'll have a look at that. Any other questions at all?
Do you know one thing I have to say to you? You know Hitler had Parkinson's disease.
No, I didn't know that, no.
He did. When he was in prison writing Mein Kampf, he started to get this thing with it, which is why he always went to his hand behind his back.
Yeah.
Then it started to come into his left leg.
Yeah.
And when, that was as a result of the First World War gas. And everybody who was gassed, it's a little known fact, developed Parkinson's disease. And I wonder whether he was really in his right mind as time went on, and whether he wasn't taken over by others.
He was taken over by others, I do believe, and I think that the Americans and the Russians probably reached that conclusion from the research they'd done.
There was a program on the History Channel, which was the diary of his doctor.
Yes.
Talking about all the different drugs he was on.
Yes.
And I think towards the end he was just totally delusional.
Yeah. Yeah, and he'd be the best state of mind for a takeover, for a walk-in, to be possessed, wouldn't he, I suppose, from evil.
He was trying to bring back the worship of the pagan gods and all this kind of thing. So he was on something.
According to the Americans, when they did this, there's an interesting correlation between Nick Redfern's book, Final Events, and the other book to do with... I've forgotten the name. It's a Linda Moulton Howe's book, High Strangeness, Volume 1, whereby the Department of Defence had been using psychics and they'd had their brains blown out because they were taking on these mysterious entities within the ether that were coming into people, and they tried to take them on. And the crucial concept is that the Department of Defence said that they thought they were winning, but they weren't. They were that clever, these non-human entities. And I think 2 global conflicts have not been a random coincidence. I think it's intelligently led by something unknown. All the experiencers here have had experiences that would lead to that, I do believe, that would lead to that conclusion. I know I'm one of them, I'm sure the people in the room, some people in the room are as well, yeah? I don't know where Miles is he? He's here.
Miles is just there.
I think they've basically overloaded with information. So we've done the conclusions, we've done what it's about, we've done where the link is between your work, what we're looking at here, the UFO situation.
To the black goo?
Sorry? No, I'm referring to non-human entities and the walk-ins and the possessions that are possibly leading to such chaos in the world when perhaps the ancient version of what we're seeing had an ordered society. We've gone through the Hitler stuff to do with non-human entities and the Collins elite and all that kind of thing.
I think the important phrase here is non-human.
Yes.
The use of disinformation of alien and ET is a major misinformation of getting us to look up there when we need to look down here. So if we're happy, we'll have a short break before the rest of the lunch people come in. And Jeff Scott will be next. Jeff Scott is a MyLab He's a victim. He's been programmed, and also he's, well, I'll announce this when he gets up to speak. And he's got something in common with James, Michael. And there are some gentlemen around here, if you talk amongst the other guests, the other attendees, you will learn something. This is one of the things about this. You may not necessarily be able to attend a lecture, but do feel free to talk to other people and exchange stories, because there are some very interesting pieces of information being shared about some very crucial things. For instance, there's a guy who confirms one of Michael's cases, which he mentioned on one of the tapes. He was there. But we won't say too much more than that, because that would just spoil a moment.
I think they've basically overloaded with information. So we've done the conclusions, we've done what it's about, we've done where the link is between your work, what we're looking at here, the UFO situation.
To the black goo?
Sorry? No, I'm referring to non-human entities and the walk-ins and the possessions that are possibly leading to such chaos in the world, when perhaps the ancient version of what we're seeing had an ordered society. We've gone through the Hitler stuff to do with non-human entities and the Collins elite and all that kind of thing.
I think the important phrase here is non-human.
Yes.
The use of disinformation of alien and ET is a major misinformation of getting us to look up there when we need to look down here. So